Slide 1. Introduction. Continuing from the previous day's discussion, today this your host, Harshit Simha, continuing the series by discussing the Sustainable Audio Development Goal 10 represents a critical and ambitious global commitment to addressing the pervasive issue of inequality in its myriad forms. It moves beyond a simplistic focus on economic disparity to encompass a broader spectrum of inequities, including those based on income, social status, gender, age, disability, race, and ethnicity, both within nations and across international borders. The fundamental significance of SDG 10 lies in its recognition that high levels of inequality are corrosive to the fabric of societies. They undermine social cohesion, impede economic growth, and threaten long-term stability. Reducing these disparities is therefore not merely a moral imperative but a pragmatic necessity for achieving sustainable development in its truest sense. The implementation of this goal, particularly in complex and diverse contexts like India, presents profound challenges. These include deeply entrenched social hierarchies, unequal access to quality education and healthcare, and significant gaps in economic opportunity and political representation. Progress necessitates a multifaceted approach, involving targeted policies, legislative interventions, and innovative programs designed to empower marginalized communities and promote social, economic, and political inclusion. Ultimately, understanding SDG 10 is to acknowledge that the path to a more equitable and just global society requires a concerted effort to dismantle systemic barriers and ensure that the benefits of progress are shared by all, leaving no one behind. Slide 2. Understanding Inequality, a multidimensional challenge. The contemporary discourse on inequality has decisively moved beyond the narrow confines of income and wealth distribution, evolving to embrace a far more complex and multidimensional challenge. This modern understanding, central to frameworks like the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 10, recognizes that disadvantage manifests through intersecting and mutually reinforcing layers. Inequality is a complex and pervasive challenge that extends far beyond simple measures of income, manifesting across multiple, interconnected dimensions. Economic inequality forms the most commonly understood layer, encompassing the vast disparities in income and the concentration of wealth. This is not merely about different salary levels but involves deep-seated financial insecurity for many alongside the significant accumulation of assets by a few. Social inequality arises from discrimination and prejudice based on identity. It involves the systemic and social barriers faced by individuals and groups due to their gender, race, ethnicity, religion, or disability status. This dimension perpetuates unequal access to opportunities, justice, and social dignity. Political inequality refers to the unequal access to power, influence, and representation within governance structures. When political voice and the ability to affect decision-making are concentrated in the hands of a select few, it leads to policies that may fail to address the needs of the marginalized, further entrenching other forms of inequality. Finally, global inequality highlights the stark disparities between nations. It reflects the development gaps in wealth, technology, health outcomes, and economic opportunity between advanced economies and developing countries, shaping global dynamics and migration patterns. In conclusion, inequality is not a one-dimensional issue. Its economic, social, political, and global facets are deeply intertwined, each reinforcing the others. A comprehensive understanding of this multidimensional challenge is the essential first step toward formulating effective and inclusive solutions for a more equitable world. Slide 3. The significance of SDG 10. Sustainable Development Goal 10, focused on reducing inequality, is not a standalone objective but a fundamental prerequisite for achieving the entire 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Its significance is multifaceted, acting as a critical enabler for societal progress, economic resilience, and global stability. At its core, SDG 10 is a commitment to human dignity, affirming the right of every individual, irrespective of origin or identity, to live a life of respect and opportunity. The economic imperative is equally compelling. By promoting inclusive growth, SDG 10 moves beyond the simplistic metric of aggregate GDP to ensure that prosperity is broadly shared. This creates more resilient economies powered by a healthier, more educated, and economically participative citizenry, thereby fostering sustainable and long-term equitable progress. Furthermore, addressing systemic inequalities is paramount for social stability. extreme disparities in wealth and opportunity are well-documented catalysts for social unrest, political polarization, and conflict, which undermine the foundations of peaceful societies. Ultimately, the profound significance of SDG 10 lies in its synergistic role as an accelerator for all other global goals. Inequalities in income and access to resources directly undermine progress in health, SDG 3, quality education, SDG 4, and climate action, SDG 13. Therefore, reducing inequalities is not merely a moral pursuit but a strategic investment in creating a stable, prosperous, and sustainable future for all. Slide 4. Key targets of SDG 10. The architecture of Sustainable Development Goal 10 is defined by a set of precise and interconnected targets that provide a comprehensive roadmap for reducing inequality. These targets move beyond abstract principles to establish measurable objectives, addressing both domestic disparities and global power imbalances. A central economic target is the mandate to promote income growth for the bottom 40% of the population at a rate higher than the national average. This is a deliberate strategy to close the income gap by ensuring that economic prosperity disproportionately benefits the most marginalized, thereby fostering inclusive growth. Concurrently, the goal champions social inclusion by calling for the empowerment and promotion of all individuals, irrespective of identity or status, into the social, economic, and political fabric of society. This necessitates the policy reform of discriminatory laws and the proactive adoption of fiscal, wage, and social protection policies engineered for greater equality. These domestic efforts are complemented by targets aimed at rectifying international inequities, specifically by advocating for improved global governance. This includes enhancing the representation of developing countries in international financial institutions and ensuring a more voice in global decision-making forums. Together, these targets recognize that inequality is a multifaceted phenomenon requiring a dual approach: internal policies that foster inclusion and redistribute opportunity, and external advocacy for a more equitable global system that does not perpetuate existing hierarchies. Slide 5. Measuring progress beyond GDP. The pursuit of Sustainable Development Goal 10, reducing inequality, necessitates a fundamental shift in how we quantify national progress. Traditional economic metrics, particularly gross domestic product, GDP, are profoundly insufficient as they measure aggregate economic activity while remaining entirely agnostic to its distribution. A nation's GDP can rise even as inequality deepens, masking the lived reality for a majority of its citizens and providing a dangerously incomplete picture of societal well-being. This recognition has catalyzed the development of more sophisticated, multidimensional frameworks designed to measure what truly matters. The Inequality-Adjusted Human Development Index, IHDI, is a seminal example, which discounts a country's average human development score based on the level of inequality in health, education, and income. This reveals the stark difference between potential and actual well-being. Similarly, the World Happiness Report and Bhutan's pioneering Gross National Happiness Index incorporate critical qualitative dimensions such as social support, freedom, environmental quality, and psychological well-being. These alternative metrics are not merely academic exercises, they are vital policy tools. By moving beyond GDP, governments can more accurately diagnose societal challenges, design targeted interventions that genuinely improve equitable outcomes, and steer their nations toward a form of development that is not only economically sound but also socially inclusive and sustainable. They reframe the objective of governance from fostering economic growth to nurturing holistic prosperity. Slide 6. Cross-country inequality comparison. A comparative analysis of global inequality reveals profound disparities in the distribution of wealth and opportunity, highlighting the critical role of policy and historical context. As illustrated by metrics like the Gini coefficient and the top 10% income share, nations cluster into distinct paradigms. Nordic nations like Denmark exemplify low inequality and high opportunity. With a Gini coefficient of 28.2 and the top 10% capturing just 26.9% of national income, Denmark also ranks first in social mobility. This indicates a society where wealth is relatively well distributed and an individual's life outcomes are not heavily predetermined by their parents' status. Germany follows a similar, though slightly less equal, pattern. In stark contrast, countries like South Africa and Brazil represent the extreme end of the inequality spectrum. South Africa's Gini coefficient of 63.0 is among the world's highest, with the top 10% claiming a staggering 65.4% of income. Brazil mirrors this with a Gini of 53.4. Both nations, alongside India, rank poorly on social mobility, 77th, 60th, and 76th, respectively, indicating that high inequality is deeply entrenched and opportunity is limited. The United States and China present interesting cases. The US has a high Gini, 41.4, and top 10% share, 45.5%, yet its social mobility rank, 27th, is better than its economic inequality suggests, though not exemplary. China's figures, Gini of 38.5, show significant disparity, compounded by low social mobility, 45th. India's situation is particularly concerning. While its Gini coefficient, 35.7, appears moderate, the top 10% garner over half, 56.1%, of the national income, one of the highest shares in the comparison. This, combined with its low social mobility rank, 76th, highlights a society with extreme concentration of wealth and limited opportunities for upward movement, posing a significant challenge to equitable development. Slide 7. Global Inequality Landscape. The global inequality landscape is not a monolith but a complex and variegated mosaic, defined by profound regional disparities and paradoxical national exceptions. The Gini coefficient remains a pivotal metric for mapping this terrain, revealing a world where geography and policy choices create starkly different outcomes. Latin America and Sub-Saharan Africa consistently emerge as epicenters of high inequality, often a legacy of colonial structures, resource-based economies, and persistent challenges in governance and fiscal redistribution. In contrast, Europe, particularly its Nordic social democracies, exemplifies the potential of deliberate policy intervention. Through robust social welfare systems, progressive taxation, and strong labor protections, these nations have achieved remarkably lower levels of inequality, demonstrating that economic advancement and equity are not mutually exclusive. A critical anomaly within this pattern is the United States, a high-income nation whose inequality metrics more closely resemble those of emerging economies, underscoring how domestic political choices can override broader income-based trends. Meanwhile, regions like South Asia and East Asia present dynamic and evolving pictures. While rapid growth has lifted millions from poverty, the benefits have often been disproportionately captured, leading to rising internal disparities. This global overview confirms that inequality is not an inevitable byproduct of development but a direct consequence of institutional frameworks, historical legacies, and the political will to enact inclusive policies. Slide 8. International organizations and inequality reduction. International organizations constitute a critical ecosystem in the global effort to reduce inequality, operating through distinct yet complementary mandates. The United Nations provides the foundational normative framework, most notably through the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, while its specialized agencies like the UNDP offer crucial technical assistance and capacity building to member states. Alongside, financial institutions play an operational role. The World Bank has explicitly pivoted its mission towards fostering shared prosperity, targeting the income growth of the bottom 40% through targeted development programs and extensive research on poverty dynamics. Simultaneously, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, has evolved to more systematically incorporate inequality analyses into its macroeconomic surveillance and lending conditionality, moving beyond a singular focus on fiscal austerity. This shift acknowledges that structural adjustment can have profoundly regressive social consequences if not carefully designed. Complementing these intergovernmental efforts, non-governmental organizations and global civil society, such as Oxfam, serve as indispensable actors. They function as advocates, researchers, and watchdogs, raising public awareness through influential reports and holding powerful institutions accountable for policies that may exacerbate economic disparities. Despite this coordinated front, a persistent tension remains between the mandate for economic stability and the pursuit of equity, underscoring that the effectiveness of these organizations hinges on their continued evolution towards policies that are not only economically sound but also socially just. Slide 9. Global Innovative Approaches. Confronting the multifaceted challenge of inequality necessitates innovative policy approaches that move beyond traditional frameworks. Globally, pioneering initiatives are demonstrating the potential for transformative change through bold fiscal, social, and governance experiments. Progressive taxation in Scandinavian nations exemplifies this, where top marginal rates exceeding 55% are not a hindrance to competitiveness but the very foundation of a social contract that funds comprehensive welfare states, thereby directly reducing income disparity and fostering social mobility. Complementing fiscal tools are radical social protection models. Experiments with universal basic income (UBI), such as Finland's pilot with unemployed citizens and Give Directly's long-term study in rural Kenya, provide compelling evidence that unconditional cash transfers can significantly enhance economic security, reduce poverty, and empower individuals to make strategic life choices, challenging conventional notions of welfare conditionality. Perhaps most transformative is the innovation in democratic engagement, participatory budgeting. Originating in Porto Alegre, Brazil, this mechanism decentralizes fiscal power by allowing citizens to directly deliberate and decide on municipal spending priorities. By giving marginalized communities agency over resources, it addresses not only economic but also political inequality, ensuring public spending more accurately reflects public need and promotes equitable resource allocation. These approaches collectively illustrate that reducing inequality requires both resource redistribution and the redistribution of power. Slide 10. India's inequality profile. India's economic ascent presents a profound paradox. Remarkable aggregate growth coupled with some of the world's most extreme concentrations of wealth. The statistics are staggering. The top 10% of the population commands a colossal 77% of national wealth, while the bottom 50% subsists on a mere 1%. This places India among the most unequal major economies globally, a condition starkly summarized by its Gini coefficient of 35.7, which, while significant, often understates the true depth of disparity captured in wealth metrics. However, India's inequality profile is not solely economic. It is a complex, multidimensional phenomenon deeply entrenched in historical social structures. The persistence of the caste system creates a rigid hierarchy that severely limits opportunity and mobility for disadvantaged groups. This is compounded by significant gender disparities, religious divisions, and a pronounced rural-urban divide. The latter ensures that access to quality education, healthcare, and modern infrastructure remains vastly unequal, perpetuating cycles of disadvantage. This profile illustrates that India's challenge is unique. Its inequality is not merely a failure of redistribution but is woven into the very fabric of its society. Addressing it requires more than economic policy. It demands a concerted attack on deep-seated social stratification to ensure that the benefits of growth translate into broad-based improvement in human development, not just the enrichment of a tiny elite. Slide 11. Multidimensional inequality in India. India's profound economic disparities are merely the surface manifestation of a deeper, more complex architecture of multidimensional inequality. This structure is built upon intersecting and reinforcing social hierarchies that perpetuate exclusion across generations. Foremost among these is caste-based inequality, where despite constitutional abolition, Dalits and Adivasis continue to face systemic discrimination, resulting in severely constrained access to quality education, formal employment, and equitable justice, effectively calcifying socioeconomic disadvantage. Concurrently, gender inequality presents a severe paradox. While female educational attainment has risen, the female labor force participation rate has plummeted to among the world's lowest, reflecting a crisis of economic opportunity driven by entrenched patriarchal norms, safety concerns, and a lack of suitable jobs. This denies economic agency to millions and represents a colossal waste of human capital. Furthermore, these social fractures are compounded by stark regional disparities. A pronounced divergence exists between more developed southern and western states and the northern, heartland, states, creating a geographical dimension to inequality. Citizens' life chances, their access to healthcare, education, and infrastructure, are heavily determined by their state of residence. These dimensions, caste, gender, and region, do not operate in isolation but intersect to create unique and compounded experiences of deprivation, making a singular policy focus on income entirely inadequate for addressing India's equity challenge. Slide 12. Challenges in India's inequality reduction efforts. India's pursuit of SDG 10 is a formidable undertaking, constrained by a complex web of structural, fiscal, and institutional challenges that impede effective policy implementation. A primary obstacle is the pervasive implementation gap, where well-designed schemes falter due to bureaucratic inefficiency, limited state capacity, and corruption, preventing vital benefits from reaching their intended recipients, particularly the most marginalized. This is exacerbated by the structure of the economy itself. With nearly 90% of the workforce engaged in the informal sector, a vast population remains beyond the reach of formal social protection, labor laws, and stable incomes, rendering them acutely vulnerable to economic shocks and perpetuating intergenerational poverty. Compounding this is a tax system limitation. India's low tax to GDP ratio critically constrains the fiscal space available for large-scale social spending and redistribution, while the structure of taxation itself lacks the progressivity needed to effectively address extreme wealth concentration. Furthermore, significant data limitations create a critical blind spot, hindering accurate measurement of multidimensional inequality and the precise evaluation of policy impacts. This makes designing targeted, evidence-based interventions exceptionally difficult. These challenges are deeply embedded in the political economy, where elite interests can often stymie substantive redistribution, and are now amplified by a persistent digital divide that risks creating new forms of exclusion even as India modernizes. Slide 13. Regional Case Studies. Kerala Model. The Kerala model stands as a seminal case study in development economics, demonstrating that exceptional human development outcomes are not merely a function of aggregate economic wealth but of strategic political choices and equitable investment. Despite a per capita income close to the national average, Kerala boasts social indicators, including near universal literacy, high life expectancy, and low infant mortality, that rival those of far wealthier nations. This remarkable achievement is the product of a deliberate, multi-decade strategy. Foundational land reforms in the mid-20th century initiated a reduction in asset inequality, while early and sustained public investment in universal education and a robust public health system created a high-capability society. Crucially, these efforts were coupled with significant advancements in gender equality, fostering higher female literacy and social participation, which in turn had multiplier effects on family welfare and demographic outcomes. Furthermore, Kerala's success is underpinned by a unique model of participatory governance. The effective devolution of power and resources to local bodies, Panchayati Raj institutions, has fostered community involvement in planning and implementation, ensuring that development initiatives are responsive to local needs and enhance accountability. The model thus provides a powerful blueprint, illustrating that political commitment to social democracy and human capability expansion can effectively overcome structural constraints to reduce multidimensional inequality. Slide 14. Private sector role in reducing inequality. The contemporary mandate for the private sector extends beyond profit generation to encompass a pivotal role in addressing systemic inequality. Corporations, as major employers and economic actors, possess significant leverage to either exacerbate or ameliorate disparities through their co-operational practices. A fundamental contribution lies in adopting fair compensation practices, including the provision of living wages and the reduction of excessive executive-to-worker pay ratios, which directly combat income inequality and enhance employee dignity and purchasing power. Furthermore, corporations wield immense influence through their responsible supply chain management, ensuring fair labor standards and ethical treatment of workers across often complex global production networks. Internally, a genuine commitment to diversity and inclusion, manifested through non-discriminatory hiring, equitable promotion policies, and inclusive workplace cultures, can dismantle barriers and create pathways for marginalized groups. Beyond internal operations, the rise of ESG, environmental, social, governance, investing and impact investing channels substantial capital towards enterprises that explicitly address social challenges, creating a powerful market incentive for ethical conduct. Ultimately, the most systemic contribution may be corporate tax responsibility. By fairly contributing to public coffers, businesses fund the state's capacity to provide essential services, education, healthcare, social protection, that form the bedrock of a more equal society. This redefines corporate citizenship, positioning the private sector not as an alternative to government but as an essential partner in building inclusive economies. Slide 15. Future trends and emerging challenges. The landscape of inequality is being rapidly reshaped by powerful, interconnected global forces, presenting unprecedented challenges that threaten to exacerbate existing divides. Foremost among these is climate change inequality, which acts as a pernicious multiplier of disadvantage. Vulnerable populations with the fewest resources bear the brunt of environmental disruptions, while often being excluded from the benefits of green transition policies. This necessitates a steadfast commitment to ensuring a just transition that prioritizes equity. Furthermore, significant demographic shifts will strain social systems. Aging populations in developed nations challenge pension schemes, while youth bulges in developing regions demand massive job creation. These dynamics, compounded by climate and conflict-induced migration, will redefine inequality both within and between nations. These trends underscore that the future of inequality is not predetermined but will be dictated by the policy choices made today, demanding coordinated international governance to manage their cross-border implications effectively. Concurrently, the Fourth Industrial Revolution, characterized by rapid advancements in AI and automation, presents a profound dualism. While promising enhanced productivity, it risks creating a stark bifurcation in the labor market, disproportionately displacing workers in routine occupations and potentially concentrating vast wealth among technology owners and a highly skilled elite, unless countered by proactive education and social protection policies. Slide 16. Policy recommendations for India. Addressing India's entrenched inequality demands a comprehensive and integrated policy approach that targets its economic, social, and regional dimensions simultaneously. A cornerstone of this strategy must be the strengthening of social protection to create a resilient flow for all citizens. This entails not only expanding the coverage of existing schemes to universally encompass the vast informal workforce but also piloting innovative models like a universal basic income to provide direct economic security and empower the most vulnerable. Concurrently, progressive fiscal reform is non-negotiable for funding this ambition and directly tackling extreme wealth concentration. Implementing wealth and inheritance taxes, while broadening the income tax base, can generate the crucial revenue required to meet the long-standing recommendations of investing 6% of GDP in health and 10% in education. Such public investment is the most potent tool for leveling the playing field and enhancing human capabilities. However, economic measures alone are insufficient. A dedicated focus on addressing social discrimination through the stringent enforcement of anti-discrimination laws and promoting representation in leadership is essential to dismantle the caste and gender-based barriers that perpetuate disadvantage. Finally, these efforts must be guided by improved data systems that regularly collect and disaggregate information by gender, caste, religion, and disability. This enables precise targeting, monitors intersectional disparities, and ensures accountability, transforming well-intentioned policies into tangible outcomes for a more equitable India. This brings end to our presentation. As we move forward, we shall begin exploring Sustainable Development Goals 11 for sustainable cities, building inclusive, safe, and resilient communities worldwide. We encourage you to stay connected with our channel for the upcoming session, and to share this content with fellow professionals who share their passion for sustainable development with our channel. Until then, I wish you all about their professional journey filled with excitement, challenges and sustainable prosperity.